Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome to Islam for Europeans. This is your host, Robert. Please like and subscribe to the channel. So I wanted to make a reaction video to a recent video by a well-known sister on YouTube. Her channel is Aisha Rosali. Please like and subscribe to her channel as well. First and foremost, she has some really great Islamic content. It's really great to see, that there are sisters who are producing, Islamic content in the social media world. And on top of that, she's a convert herself, as she talks about a lot of, convert-related issues. I have nothing but great things to say about this sister. Secondly, and this video is going to be a critical analysis. I do think that she brings up a lot of really great important issues, and it's a great starting point for the subject of converts seeking marriage and whatnot. And the main critiques that I have are not directed toward her per se, but just the general model that many Muslim communities use up until the present day in the West and non-Muslim countries more generally. So, this is not going to be anything against her. I mean, I'm not trying to backbite or, bash her channel. I think she did a lot of great work. She did a great work with, with this video as well. I just think that the main critique is that, the current way that we try to deal with, marriage issues when it comes to converts, it's necessary, the things that we're doing, such as finding a wali, but it's not sufficient. And I'm going to, try to propose a different model in hopes to, start the subject on, this conversation, because, with Ramadan fast approaching, may Allah help us grant benefit, with this blessed month that's coming up, and may Allah help us see it. You're going to see a massive influx of people converting to Islam. And, I think we really have to ask ourselves, are we prepared for that? Are we just going to try the same, strategies that we've been using in different mosques throughout the West, if they have any strategy to begin with, to try to acclimate these converts? Or are we just going to end up, throwing money at the problem? Or are we going to devise, actual strategies, that can help, the majority of people that are going to take their shahada in the coming month, right? So basically her video was, trying to find, a Muslim husband as a female convert. You gave the actual title, which I have here, and that is trying to marry a Muslim man as a British girl who converted to Islam. So, she brings up a lot of interesting points, which I'm going to address one by one. Like I said, I agree with a lot of what she's saying in terms of what the problems are. I just think that, the proposed solutions that, not just her, but I guess the Muslim communities in general in the West, that they're proposing, they don't go far enough. So, I'll get right to it. One of the things that she said, which I think is a good point, is that Muslim converts do not have a wali. And a wali is, for those who don't know, is basically a guardian. So a wali is a Muslim man, usually, in the case of when you have a born Muslim woman, her father or her uncle or a brother. And his role is basically to investigate and vet out, potential spouses, finding out about, the potential suitor's history, what their life is like, what kind of character they have, what are their finances, to be basically a protector or guardian. And that way, It's not like dating. So, and she's absolutely correct with this, lust is not involved, because in the Western, the Western and non-Muslim world, basically, people date. That's how they find out if they're, if a spouse is going to be, or a potential partner is going to be compatible. Now, it's not a very effective way of finding out if someone's going to be compatible because your heart takes over. But with a wali, what happens is that, this person is investigating from the very get-go, right? And um, converts to Islam, we don't have this. Whether you're male or female, our entire families and our entire communities, it's not just the fact that they're not Muslim, but you are converting to Islam and entering into, for those who, choose to, basically enter into a completely new community with a totally new set of people that you may have never met before. Um, you basically really have no connections, with this Muslim community, coming in as a complete outsider. So, the wali will, basically be as a investigate, look throughout the grapevine, and then finally, once that there's a potential suitor, usually what will happen is that the born Muslim families, they will meet, like, before the potential husband and wife meet, to see if this is going to be compatible or not. And this many Muslim families will just completely avoid this process because they'll actually marry into the same Muslim family, like it's via cousin marriage. So, the idea of two families seeing if they're compatible, that's not even going to be an issue for those. But for all intents and purposes, let's just focus on the idea of two families meeting together. So for converts to say have a wali, specifically with female converts, I think that in theory, it's a good idea. I mean, having a wali as a female convert to Islam is far better than having no wali whatsoever. But I guess my main critique is that it's not sufficient, for several reasons. One is that normally these walis, they don't really do their due diligence. Like in theory, they should, it's a wali will be able to, see if this future spouse is going to be compatible with the convert for the rest of their lives. But many of them don't do their due diligence, and it's very difficult to do so, because many times the wali will meet with the potential suitor a couple of times, maybe at a coffee shop, or the mosque, or a restaurant, to try to vet this person, when really the proper investigative process that a family might have gone through is completely absent, right? So when people interview other people for a job, they'll look at how they're dressed, their attitude, are they positive, do they make eye contact? um, there's no way for, I mean, a lot of companies will do this. They'll do background checks on the person to begin with. They'll see, look at, like, they might look at the potential employee's history. But sometimes they don't. They'll just want someone who fits the criteria. But many times the wali, won't be able to check back several years for this person because many times they're not. This person might be a complete stranger. Um, and it's very difficult to gauge whether someone is going to be compatible for marriage, based on a couple of interviews. um, and some people who may not have your best interest at heart, they may be, like, really have a lot of mental or emotional issues, or maybe they're a narcissist. These people, they're trained to make a great impression on people. That's their spiel. They want to present something, as if they're giving a job interview, when many times the wali have never met this person in their life. They don't know what they're like as a boss, how they treat their employees. They don't know, they may not know what they're like, how they treat their other family members. And in the Western world, you have a lot of Muslim communities. Some are tight knit; they've been around for generations, but others are just recently new arrivals, and they don't. Apart from maybe a few families, they don't really know each other that well. So what I'm trying to say is, you can't really supplant the loss that a convert will experience from not having a Muslim family and belonging to a tight knit Muslim community. and just having the wali, make up for that. Trying to gauge if someone's going to be compatible over, for a period of years. I mean, this is something that, detectives and police officers will take months of training, uh, you know, seeing if someone has some sort of, issues like checking their eye movements, if they're fidgety. It takes a tremendous amount of training, and very few walis are going to have this level of, awareness. So that's one thing. Um, so, but I think further to that, I think there are many more issues that, um, we don't really think about when it comes to having the wali supplant, basically the loss of having a Muslim family. And one of the things that I'm going to push back on what Sister Aisha said, even though I said, like I she did say a lot of great things in her video, is using the imam as a wali, right? So I'm going to push back on this, and she said, like in a local imam can be a wali. I'm gonna say that in most cases, um, especially in the Western world, the imam is really not suitable to be a wali for many of these convert sisters for several reasons. One is that, there are some imams in the West that we know of where when a convert woman takes her shahada, having just walked into a mosque, he will literally take out a paper of people who are looking for a convert to marry and just basically give them a list. And this is just basically like a cookie cutter solution. Here's a list of brothers who are looking to get married. So, and that's really seriously a problem because, again, these sisters have no wali. A lot of these imams, who knows how much they've vetted these people. And when it comes to an imam who, sincerely wants to, find a husband for these women, you have to keep in mind that, again, I'm speaking from a brother's perspective. Usually when these Muslim guys talk to the imam and they're in an Islamic environment, they're on their best behavior. They're not going to, the imam is not going to see how they treat, their employees, their family, their customers, what they're like on the telephone. And, like I said, they're, like if someone's looking to marry like a convert sister and go straight to the imam, like, this imam is not going to really see what this person is like, in their personal life. And on top of that, the imams, especially in the West, I don't know, Canada, I've noticed this, but, it's probably the same thing in the UK. People who are practicing brothers, they usually spend most of their time in an Islamic environment or within their own cultural sphere. So for these potential walis, they will be, most of their time is spent A, at work, B, in the masjid, C, with their family and, extended family, and D, maybe just, the supermarket, or, like places of necessity that are within the Anglosphere, right? For an imam, they're in an even smaller Islamic bubble. So an imam will usually never really venture out between the masjid, their family life, and maybe the supermarket. So, like these imams really don't get out that much. And on top of that, I know that in Canada, I know about the UK, but many of these imams are coming in as outsiders as well. They come from other countries. They've been hired by, the mosque board, to basically run the mosque. So a lot of them don't really interact or are, hear through the grapevine many things, with even within their own community, of born Muslims. And when something bad does happen, usually the imam, people aren't going to tell the imam, when, some, Muslim goes off the rails at work and starts, hitting people. I mean, like, imams don't really, concern themselves with gossip, right? And then lastly, many times the imam doesn't really understand the cultural differences and situational differences between converts and born Muslims. Let's be honest. Like, and I said before in my previous video about, open houses. Some imams are just unaware of things that are basic as, the cultural significance of the Super Bowl. And Some imams will say, who cares about, your family's reaction? What's important is that you've converted to Islam, which is true in and of itself. But that's a major point of a struggle of a convert is dealing with their non-Muslim family and community. Which brings me to my next point, and that is that um, it's not just the fact that you're not involving the potential suitor's born Muslim family. And I think Sister Alicia alluded to that. She gave two examples where a suitor told his family, and then they went on a hunger strike. Another suitor told his family, and basically then he got blocked. So I think what's happening in a lot of these situations is that you have these brothers who are looking to get married, and they don't tell their Muslim family. They want to go through the process first of trying to marry a convert sister, and when their family finds out, that's kind of like like the secondary thing. And a lot of these brothers, had they been practicing pious Muslims, I think a lot of them, they don't go through this process in the first place. They usually, with practicing brothers, their family will find out something for them. So it's kind of like a selection bias, right? Or an attrition bias, really. The pious practicing brothers already have this set up in place with their Muslim family, and they'll try to find a suitable candidate. A lot of these, I'm not trying to generalize here, but some of these brothers who are looking for a convert wife, they've already have problems with their family to begin with. Maybe they don't. And there's other things too. Maybe the converts don't want to. Maybe these born Muslims don't have the funds, basically, to marry a born Muslim woman, because many of these born Muslim women ask for a very expensive mahr, $10,000, $20,000. Where a lot of these convert sisters, they don't ask for anything at all. But that's one point. But many times the converts, their families are not involved whatsoever. And I understand that a non-Muslim cannot act as a wali. So that's true. But like, that doesn't mean that a convert's family cannot or shouldn't be involved in the marriage process, because this is going to greatly affect not just their son or daughter's lives, but their lives as well. And I think for many converts, if they're in a situation where their family has rejected them, or maybe they're hiding their Islam from their family, that puts them in a very precarious situation, because maybe they are looking to get married, but at the same time, they haven't even told their family that they're Muslim. So, like, you have this double shock. And maybe, their family is okay with them being Muslim, but at the same time, like they don't want to deal with getting married into a Muslim family as well. So, the whole idea of like getting, a convert, just getting simply a wali, to supplant the fact that you don't have a Muslim family. I mean, like I said, it's better than nothing. But I think at the end of the day, in most of these cases, the wali is not going to do their due diligence and not going to be able to find out all the nitty gritty details about these potential suitors. And B, both families are not going to be involved, right? That brings me to my next point, and that is that, and Sister Aisha, she mentioned this in her video, that one of the second biggest issue was intercultural marriage. Now, she didn't actually give any specific points, which I don't know if that was done on purpose, or maybe she just forgot it, or maybe she just cut it or edited it out. But I think this is, a major issue. And I think, we have to look at really, what's prescribed in the Sunnah, first and foremost, because a lot of people are unaware that finding a compatible spouse in terms of similar lineage, custom, economic status, this is actually a Sunnah. A lot of people don't realize this. It's called kafa. I think kafa, for the longest time is, such a controversial subject in the Western world, because, like, it's discriminatory in terms of, finding a suitable spouse, that a lot of, Islamic classes, even marriage classes, would just totally sweep this under a rug. I remember being in an Al-Maghrib class, and there was a Hanafi scholar who was basically teaching, the class, which is basically the fiqh of marriage. And this came up. One of the, Muslim girls said, I was trying to get married to a convert, and my father was basically, I don't want you to marry a convert because, the cultures are incompatible. Is this haram? And the teacher, he said, actually, it is in the Hanafi madhab. A father can actually reject the marriage of potential suitor if he feels that the cultures will be incompatible. Right. So this caused a big stir, but this is actually a sunnah. I mean, in 3 of the 4 schools of thought, um, it is not just acceptable, but sometimes prescribed that a potential marriage suitor should be similar in lineage, custom, culture, economic status, school of thought, all of these things. So, um, you know, the idea of just marrying someone, from a totally different culture, hey, for some people it works. I mean, I was able to pull it off. Some converts are able to pull it off. But this is, you know, I think, it's the exception and not the rule. I mean, marrying as a convert when, you don't have a sub community of existing converts, um, marrying another convert. Sorry, a fire truck was just going by. Just gonna let this pass. Marrying another potential convert is much more difficult, because you don't have a sub community to begin with. Um, you yourself are coming into a Muslim community as an outsider, but so are all the other potential converts. And since we have not organized in any way, and because, in um, conservative Muslim communities, you have complete and total gender separation, um, that prospect is even more difficult. And I'll get into this later, but just to say in general, it's very difficult. There are a lot of difficulties associated with it. I'll just give you a couple of examples. Um, like in Western cultures, for example, um, talking to our cousins of, the opposite gender, there's absolutely no sexual attraction. But in Muslim societies, a cousin of the opposite gender is a potential marriage candidate, right? So, there was one situation, there was a female convert, who had no problem talking to her male cousins, right? But this would actually absolutely enrage her husband because, like he said, look, these people are your mahram, and, like there's jealousy there. Like we don't want you, like, are you attracted to this person? From a Western mindset, I mean, that this is, like we wouldn't even think about something like this, but this would cause a lot of arguments. In Desi culture, it's actually, basically a given that a daughter-in-law is expected to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner, not just for her husband, but for his whole family. And a lot of imams will push back on this and say, like this is haram. Like they'll show that you can, like Asim Al Hakim also talked about this, that a Muslim woman isn't required to do this, only her husband. And I've seen cases where a female convert would bring this up to her husband, and the husband will say, "Look, this is how we do things in our culture. The way we make up for that is when you become a mother-in-law and when your daughters get married, then they're going to pamper you. So it evens out. But at the same time, for this sister, she didn't sign up for this. So, how can a wali ask questions such as this and, chisel, like ask every single question in order to say, look, like these cultures can work out. And, further to this isn't even practiced in the Muslim world. Intercultural marriage in the Muslim world is almost not existent. Like even within the same Muslim country, Muslims from different cities won't marry each other because the cultures are too different. And you could say, that's racist, we should all just be one united Muslim ummah and everybody should marry everybody. But the fact of the matter is, um, you're basically marrying into a totally different city and totally different, a stranger basically, where you don't know what this community is like. I think part of it is, we're not looking at it just from the perspective of um, the stage one, which is a convert seeking out a Muslim spouse. We're not looking at stage 1, 2, and 3. Stage two is basically, okay, now that this convert has married into a Muslim family, what are the factors that are going to be in place to make sure that this Muslim husband or spouse of this convert doesn't get out of line, right? And because converts don't have a Muslim family, many times you do see abuse, and the convert doesn't know what to do. Um, like a wali doesn't. They're very busy, especially the imam. This is the other thing I wanted to say about imams. Imams are extremely busy. They wear many hats at the mosque. They're the prayer leader. They give the khutbah prayer. They're the PR rep. They're the janitor. The Muslim, many of them have full-time jobs. So they don't have the time, to act as a wali, not just for all these female converts, but to, basically be their protector, if and when their Muslim husband gets out of line or becomes abusive. And like I said, Muslim imams, they don't really involve themselves outside of their own Islamic bubble. So, an imam, when your Muslim husband is abusing you, an imam is not going to go into your house or talk to your Muslim family, to try to resolve this or mediate this. I mean, he's not going to call 911. And the same goes for just a wali in general. I mean, these men are very busy. They lead very busy lives. So, trying to say, a wali is going to fix all these problems is just not going to cut it for stage two. And then there's stage three. Allah forbid if and when, it ends in divorce, like most of these intercultural marriages do. Like the imam is just not going to have the time and the resources necessary to be able to, comfort or, give solace to, these female converts. And usually I've seen it turn really ugly when you have these female converts who are basically outsiders to the Muslim community get into a divorce, and the Muslim family that will they'll since they have so many more connections within the Muslim community, they're going to present their side of the story on why it didn't work out. And tragically, that's when a lot of these female converts and male converts, not just leave the Muslim community, but many times because of these divorces, end up leaving Islam altogether. And that's the sad reality that we've seen for the last 20 years. Because a lot of times these, the convert's family would be like, I told you so. They were worried about getting married to this family, this born Muslim to begin with. They were able to see maybe red flags that the Muslim community wasn't able to see. A lot of times these, suitors, they end up cutting off the family, the convert from their non-Muslim family. With excuses such as, they're a bad influence and whatnot. I've seen cases where, a woman got married to a Muslim man and basically forbade her from seeing most of her non-Muslim family members. Wanted to keep it to like an hour short because they were engaged in, like haram activities. So yeah, I mean, it really is very challenging. And like again, me myself, I was an integrated member of the Muslim community. A lot of these converts who end up integrating into Muslim communities, they're the PhD level candidates of people who take their shahada. If you just Sister Aisha, may Allah reward her, she learned the languages, she learned the cuisine, she loved embracing other cultures, and still she went through enormous difficulty, right? So and like many other converts who became integrated members still had enormous difficulty, and what I'm trying to say is, if it was extremely difficult for us, what does that say about the vast majority of people that are going to take their shahada? Are they going to be able to deal with this? Are they going to be able to not just follow all the rules of the religion of Islam? I mean, that is enough to put on somebody's plate for a lifetime, really. And then on top of that, you're going to give the added challenge of adjusting to a completely different set of cultural norms on top of that, right? So many things to think about. I know that this is going to sound harsh. It's going to sound like I'm Chicken Little and the sky is falling. And again, these critiques are not pointed towards Sister Aisha. I think she did a great job with this video and touched on many important things. It's more of a critique of the Medina model to begin with, which is what we've been talking about, which is the model that basically says this is what Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did in Medina, so we need to copy and paste that in the 21st century West. Well, in the 21st century West, we're not living in a desert in the middle of nowhere where everybody knows one another and you just have one one community, and all these people interact with one another in order for their survival. We're living in the 21st century West. We have multiple cultures living in multiple spheres. It's a very atomized society, and I get it. You want to have a wali that's able to protect you, to vet out potential suitors. It's a good idea. It's important. I think it's better than having no wali, but it's not sufficient. And the model we're proposing, i.e., what's called the Chappist model, is that you look at the Syrian Muslim community, the Pakistani Muslim community, Somali Muslim community. They have these tight-knit groups. They've collectivized as a group. They have their own organizations. They have their own fora. They have their own societies. They have their own restaurants. They have their own businesses. They have their own masajid that they run. Nobody bats an eyelash and says, this is causing disunity in the ummah. Because yes, we're one ummah, but we're not one community. So what we're saying is that converts to Islam should do likewise. They need a wolf pack. They need a wolf pack that will be able to act as a community wali that can investigate people from the get-go before these potential suitors meet. And you want a community that if and when a Muslim spouse starts to abuse you, those protective factors will be in place so that there are going to be consequences. Right. And if you look at, all different communities in the West that have embraced Islam as a group, whether that's African American Muslims, Tzotzil Muslims in Mexico, Islam in Spanish for Latino Muslims, it has been wildly successful. It's just basically night and day, as opposed to the, process of assimilating European descendant converts into an existing Muslim community. And finally, just on a final point, and I know this is a very controversial topic as well. I know that in Canada, the two-way animosity between the Muslim community and European descendant Canadians is there to an extent. I know that it's not as bad as people make it out to be in the media, but there's still a lot of existing animosities between like white Canadians and Muslims due to mass immigration and whatnot. From what I've seen on social media, and I've never been in the UK, but just from a cursory analysis from what other British descendant converts have told me, and from what I see on social media, that animosity is next level. You just need to watch, perfect example, the interview between Piers Morgan and Mohammed Hijab. And of course, I support, Mohammed Hijab in that interview. I think he did a great job at, dispelling the myths and lies that, that Piers has presented. And, Piers has, softened his stance, over the months. But what I'm trying to get at is watch that interview in its entirety and think to yourself, do I want to have Piers Morgan and Mohammed Hijab as my father and my father-in-law? I know that sounds discriminatory, but you as a European descendant convert to Islam, you have to be aware that there is a lot of animosity between, in the UK's example, the white British and the Pakistani community, to the point that like many of the white British who are on the right, like they have nothing but utter contempt for Muslims, for Islam, Sharia law, all of this stuff, right? And vice versa. Many the UK YouTube duat, will basically use the terms white and non-Muslim interchangeably. They'll use the term white man without any recourse as to thinking, maybe this is not good for dawah in the West. They'll go on social media and call the UK or Britain a piece of crap island. Now, do you, as a white convert, do you want to be in the middle of that for the rest of your life and the rest of your kids' life? Because you may have a you may have a non-Muslim family that really dislikes Muslims, and you may marry into a Muslim family that, even though your spouse may not have a problem with white people, maybe their family does. And if you were to place these two families into a room together, it might turn into an absolute brawl. So you're going to have to deal with that, not just yourself for the rest of your life, but also your kids, for the rest of your life. And I think a lot of, Muslim families, they look at this, and I know Sister Aisha pointed this out in the video, that why don't they want to marry a convert? I learned the languages. I'm an integrated member of the Muslim community. I wear the hijab. I've ticked off all the boxes of being, the best convert I can be. And still these families don't want me, don't want me. I think it's not the fact that they don't want you. I think it's the fact that, they think to themselves, now I'm going to have grandkids and they're going to be half white. And, the Muslim community, the kids can be very cruel. They're going to call them half breeds. They're going to call them half Muslim. And on top of that, their non-Muslim in-laws, or their family on the convert side, what if they try to feed them pork? What if their grandparents tried to feed them alcohol? What if their grandparents tried to feed them non-halal meat? So a lot of Muslim families don't want to deal with that. And like when it comes to, for example, the Palestinian community, they only want to marry other Palestinians. It has nothing to do with race. I mean, they don't want to marry other non-Palestinian Arabs. It's the fact that they want to have as many Palestinian kids as humanly possible, because they're trying to get their numbers up in the diaspora for obvious reasons, right? So so lots to chew on, and I've talked at length about this. But in conclusion, I guess the point I would make is, if you want to marry into a Muslim family and you're totally down with that, and you're totally fine with assimilating into another culture, more power to you. I mean, if that's what you want to do and you're happy, I don't have anything against that. But what I'm saying is that for the vast majority of these people who are going to be taking their Shahada, it's simply not compatible. And the Muslim community doesn't have the resources to just teach Islam 101, let alone try to find a Muslim spouse, have a process in place to find a Muslim spouse, let alone act as their protector when they are married to a Muslim spouse, let alone be their protector if and when it ends in divorce. I just think that Muslim communities in the West just simply need to admit that the way we've been doing things for the last 20 years, it hasn't been working out. And if we continue down this path, when Ramadan starts in a week, we have all these shahadas coming in, they're just going to end up throwing money at the problem. And it's just going to be a waste of the Muslim community's resources. And on a final note, I guess I kind of lost my train of thought here because I had so much things I wanted to talk about. I'll just say that, may Allah reward Sister Aisha for the video that she made. I'm willing to talk. I'm glad that she started the conversation. I don't have anything, I think, she brought up a lot of issues that are really important in the Muslim community. And I think I'll just cut it off there. If there's any points that I missed, I'll just add them, in the comment section. But please let me know what you think. Please like and subscribe to Islam for Europeans, and like and subscribe to Sister Aisha's video as well. But that's my time for the day. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.